The sun was dipping low over the dusty plains, painting the horizon in streaks of gold and red, when the little girl's voice broke the heavy silence. "My mom can make you walk again," she said, her words trembling between hope and fear. The wounded Apache stirred slightly, his dark eyes narrowing against the glare of the fading light. He had been left for dead, caught in a clash that had torn through the valley like fire through dry grass. Blood matted his hair, and his arm hung useless at his side. Yet in the girl's quiet certainty, there was a promise he could not ignore. She knelt beside him, her small hands brushing against the dirt-streaked blanket that barely covered him. The wind carried the scent of smoke from a distant campfire and the sharp temps of the river that wound through the canyon like a silver snake. Around them, the land stretched endless and empty, a place where law and kindness were measured by the strength of your gun or the sharpness of your wits. Yet here in this lonely stretch of earth, a fragile thread of hope flickered, spun by a girl whose heart seemed far older than her years. The Apache tried to move, but a groan escaped his lips instead of a word. His pride, the quiet warrior's code that had guided him through every battle, felt heavy in the face of weakness. He had survived ambushes, stampedes, and the biting winter that stripped the land bare. Yet now a child sat before him, claiming she could undo what the world had done. He wanted to laugh, to curse, but his body betrayed him. His gaze fell to her small hands, scarred slightly from chores and cuts from thorny brush. And for the first time that day, he felt the stirrings of something he had long thought lost: trust. The girl's eyes were wide, dark and steady, reflecting the dying light. She had seen enough suffering to know the weight of it, yet her belief was unshakable. "I know it hurts," she said, voice soft but unwavering, "but my mom knows how to make people whole again. She doesn't just fix broken bones. She fixes broken hope too." Her words hung in the air like a fragile bridge over a deep canyon, fragile yet daring. The Apache's mind raced. Stories of women with strange powers circulated among the scattered settlement's healers. Wise women and midwives who could call the pain out of a body with a touch or a whispered word. Some called them witch-like. Others prayed for their mercy. He had never believed. But hunger, thirst, and a body aching with injury leave even the fiercest spirits questioning their own strength. And this girl, there was something unspoken in her presence, a spark of determination he could neither name nor ignore. Around them, the prairie hummed with life. A hawk wheeled overhead, circling the open sky, and the low murmur of a creek reached their ears. In the distance, the faint thud of hooves reminded them that the world beyond this moment was never still. Danger lurked even here in the seeming peace of the plains. Raiders, hunters, and the unforgiving landscape itself could strike without warning. Yet for now, the girl's words offered a fragile shelter. A momentary pause in the relentless march of hardship. "You can't just heal me," the Apache finally whispered, voice rough with disbelief. His lips were dry, his throat parched, but there was a flicker of curiosity beneath the skepticism. "People die from wounds like mine. They lie in the dust and wait for the end." The girl shook her head firmly. "Not if my mom gets to you first," she said, and there was no hesitation in her tone. "She's not like the others. She knows the ways of the land, of herbs, of what the body needs to fight itself back to life. You just have to trust her." And me. Trust was a word foreign to the Apache now. His people had taught him caution, that life is measured in sharp angles and careful steps. Yet the girl's unwavering gaze, her hands steady and gentle, kindled a warmth he hadn't felt in weeks. The ache in his body was harsh, the memory of the battle that had left him like a broken tree still vivid. But something in her belief pried open a crack in the wall around his mind. She reached out, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead. Dirt and blood streaked her small fingers, but she didn't flinch. "I promise you," she whispered, "you'll walk again. I've seen it happen." Sudden rustle from the nearby bushes made them both freeze. The wind shifted, carrying a warning scent, the smell of someone or something watching. In the old lands, nothing stayed hidden for long, and the Apache knew the danger that lurked, even when the prairie seemed silent. He tried to shift, to rise, but pain flared sharp through his side, making him gasp. The girl's eyes didn't waver. "We'll be ready," she said quietly. "You just hold still. Let me help you, even if it's just a little at a time." Her tone was firm, carrying the weight of someone who had faced storms before. Storms not of the sky, but of the heart and spirit. The Apache looked at her, this tiny figure who dared to promise what the world had taken from him. He studied her hands, the determination in her stance, and the raw honesty in her voice. And as the sun sank lower, spilling molten gold across the plain, he felt something unfamiliar, a fragile hope. Almost like the first green shoots of spring breaking through frozen soil. Behind them, the canyon walls deepened into shadow. The wind whispered through the rocks, carrying the secrets of old battles. Of lives lost and lives saved, of paths walked and roads never taken. In that quiet, tense moment, the Apache realized that this was more than just healing of the body. It was a test, a crossing, a chance to choose between despair and the unknown promise of life renewed. The girl, sensing his hesitation, leaned closer. "My mom can help you," she said again, her voice steady, her dark eyes shining with certainty. "But you have to let her. You have to trust. At least a little." He wanted to speak, to tell her he couldn't, that the world had taught him to fear hope, but the words died in his throat. The pain in his legs, the ache in his side, the memory of the fight, they all pressed him down, but somewhere beneath the weight of it all, a seed of curiosity took root. He dared to look into her eyes again, and in that look, the world seemed to tilt slightly, as if promising that the impossible might just be possible. Then, a sudden sound tore through the stillness, a crack of twigs, a low whistle carried on the wind. Eyes darting toward the shadows, the Apache's body tensed. They were not alone. The prairie held secrets, some deadly, some fleeting, and the night was coming fast. Yet, in the quiet urgency of that moment, the girl's words lingered in the air like a fragile flame. "You'll walk again," she promised, even as the danger crept closer. The Apache swallowed hard. He didn't know if he wanted to believe her, if he could survive the night, or if this land would finally claim him as it had so many before. But one thing he could not deny, the girl was unafraid. And in that unshakable courage lay the first thread of something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope, as the shadows stretched longer and the first stars appeared above the endless plains. The Apache realized that his story had only just begun. The girl's promise hung between them, a fragile lifeline in a world that had grown hard and cruel. And somewhere deep inside, a question echoed louder than any pain. Could he trust her? And in doing so, reclaim not just his legs, but his life? The night fell fast over the prairie, carrying a chill that seemed to seep into the bones. The little girl huddled closer to the wounded Apache, her small frame shivering against the wind that whispered through the tall grass. The stars were beginning to flicker above, pale and cold, and the moon cast long silver shadows over the undulating land. Every sound, the rustle of leaves, the distant howl of a coyote, the snap of a branch made the Apache's muscles tighten. Even as he tried to focus on the girl's voice, "My mom will know what to do," she said softly, breaking the tense silence. She glanced around, eyes sharp and alert, but the words seemed meant as much for herself as for him. "She's not like anyone you've seen. She knows things that you can't even imagine." The Apache's gaze followed her hands, noting the way her fingers moved as if tracing invisible lines in the air. He could see the determination etched into her small face, but his mind wandered to the stories he had heard as a boy, tales of women who lived apart from towns. In the wild, people whispering of strange powers, of herbs and chants, of the kind of wisdom that could mend not just the body, but the spirit. Most dismissed such stories as superstition, yet here was a girl insisting that hope could be restored in a man who had lost everything. "Why are you out here alone?" he asked, voice rough, each word a labor. Pain lanced through his side, a reminder that the world had not been kind. A child should be safe in a home with people who watch over her. "I don't stay alone," she said quickly, the edge of defensiveness creeping into her tone. "My mom, she's always near. She's the one who taught me how to see what others miss, how to find the right leaves, the right roots. She's the one who can make the hurt go away." Her words were urgent, almost a whisper, as if saying them louder might summon the dangers lurking just beyond the circle of their firelight. The Apache wanted to probe more, to understand how a child could know things that eluded even seasoned men of the plains. But the ache in his legs made him pause. His pride, that quiet, unyielding force that had guided him through battles and blizzards alike, bristled at his own weakness. Still, he could not deny the pull of her words, the strange calm that seemed to radiate from her, despite the shadows pressing in around them. He had lived long enough to know that caution was survival. Every encounter in the wild demanded vigilance and awareness that one misstep could bring death. Yet the girl's presence suggested something different, something almost sacred, as if she existed on the edge between the harshness of the world and the rare mercy it sometimes offered. "What's your mother like?" he asked finally, voice low, curiosity mingling with wariness. "Does she really do these things?" The girl hesitated, her eyes glinting in the firelight. She had asked herself that very question countless times, remembering stories her mother had whispered on nights like this one. Stories of old healers, of women who wandered far and wide, who mended the sick, the injured, even the broken-hearted. Some called them witches, others called them wise women. But to her mother was simply a force of nature, kind, fierce, and unyielding. "She's strong," the girl said finally. "Stronger than any man I've ever seen. People come to her when no one else can help. She knows the land, the rivers, the plants. She knows what hurts, even when you don't speak it." She reached into her pocket, pulling out a small bundle of dried herbs, their earthy scent rising in the cool night air. "She taught me which ones can ease pain, which ones can bring strength back. You have to trust her." The Apache's dark eyes studied the little bundle, then the girl's face, trying to discern truth from fanciful hope. There was an honesty in her voice, a rawness in her gaze that even his suspicion could not dismiss. The land had a way of testing men, of revealing the false from the genuine, and in her he sensed an authenticity he had not seen in weeks. Behind them, the canyon walls pressed close, shadows forming strange shapes as the moonlight touched jagged rock. Somewhere in the distance, the soft howl of wolves echoed, a reminder that the night was far from safe. The Apache's hand moved instinctively toward the hilt of his knife, even though he could barely lift his arm. His mind spun with questions: who else might be out there, waiting, watching? Was this child's mother truly what she claimed? Or was it another trick of fate, cruel and cunning to toy with the desperate? The girl noticed his hesitation and offered a small, steady smile. "I know you've been hurt," she said quietly, "but not everything out here wants to hurt you. Some things, some people, want to help?" Her gaze held his, steady and unwavering. "You have to decide which one to believe." The Apache closed his eyes for a moment, letting the wind carry the scent of her words into his senses. He remembered the battle that had left him broken, the ambush that had changed everything. He remembered the sounds of men shouting, the feel of splintered wood, the smell of smoke and blood. And beneath all that, a thread of something he hadn't felt in a long time, a yearning for trust, for healing, for life beyond mere survival. "What happened to you out here?" the girl asked suddenly, breaking his reverie. Were they coming for something? Or someone? He opened his eyes slowly, shadows reflecting in them, and considered answering. But the truth was heavy, and the past was a land scarred by loss, by betrayal, by mistakes made under the bright glare of noon and the cold bite of midnight. He could tell her part, a sliver that might guide her understanding, or he could remain silent, guarding the story as he had guarded himself for years. "They wanted the land," he said finally, voice rough. "They wanted what my people held dear. But it's gone now. All of it. I was left for nothing." Pain throbbed through his leg. But even that, he could endure more easily than the emptiness in his chest. The girl's hand hovered over the bundle of herbs. "My mom, she can help you," she said again, repeating the promise like a chant to steady them both. "You don't have to carry it alone." The Apache studied her for a long moment. Every instinct screamed caution. Every memory warned him that hope could be a dangerous thing. Yet something deep inside nudged him forward, a faint curiosity he had not felt in a long time. He wanted to see if her words were true, if the girl and her mother could bring him back from the edge. Suddenly, the quiet was shattered by a sound, a distant shout. Muffled but urgent, echoing off the canyon walls. The girl stiffened, her eyes wide, scanning the shadows where the trees grew thick. The Apache's body tensed, every muscle coiled as he tried to lift himself. Danger was near, unpredictable and fast. A reminder that trust came with risk in this unforgiving land. "We're not alone," the girl whispered, more to herself than to him, though the words carried like a bell through the night. Her small hands clenched the bundle of herbs and she drew a slow, steadying breath. "We have to move, but we can't leave the wounded behind. Not yet. My mom. She'll know what to do." The Apache's mind raced. He had faced men, storms, and hunger, yet the sense of vulnerability pressed in like nothing before. There was a new type of danger now, one that did not come with the clarity of a battlefield, one that lurked in shadows and uncertain footsteps. And in that uncertainty, a faint spark of trust and fear intertwined, a reminder that survival was never just about strength, but about choice. "Can you walk?" the girl asked quietly, her voice almost a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might summon the danger closer. "Even a little? We need to get you somewhere safe, before." Her words faltered, the threat unspoken, but very real. The Apache tried to rise, the effort sending sharp pains through his leg and side. His hand gripped the earth beneath him, fingers pressing into the cold soil as he tested the limits of his body. He could feel the night around him, thick with shadows, thick with the unknown. And he realized that every decision from this moment would define what came next. "We'll try," he said finally, voice strained yet determined. He glanced at the girl, whose small face held a strength that seemed to defy the dangers pressing in from every side. And in that glance, something shifted, the first fragile thread of a plan. Fragile hope woven tightly with raw courage. Behind them, the prairie stretched into darkness. The canyon walls, a looming shadow. Every rustle, every whisper of the wind through the grass reminded them that the night was far from safe. And yet, somehow, the promise of healing, the promise of life beyond pain, flickered like a faint fire waiting to be kindled. The girl gave him a nod, her eyes never leaving his. And for the first time that night, the Apache allowed himself to consider the impossible. He could walk again. He might survive. But only if he trusted her, and in trusting her, he would have to step into the unknown, a place where danger and hope lived side by side, and where every heartbeat mattered. The shout came again, louder this time, closer, cutting through the night like a blade. The girl's small hands clenched the herbs tighter. The Apache gritted his teeth, preparing to face whatever was coming, and somewhere deep inside, he wondered if this child and her mysterious mother could truly make the impossible real. The night had just begun, and their story was far from over. The shout had cut through the night like a whip, sharp and urgent, leaving a ripple of tension in its wake. The Apache's body stiffened, his hand pressing against the wound that had already taken so much from him. He felt the pull of instinct, the need to hide, to fight, to survive, but the little girl beside him was a quiet anchor, her small presence defying the chaos that threatened to surround them. "Quick," she whispered, her voice firm despite the fear she must have felt. She pointed toward a narrow gorge where shadows pooled like spilled ink. "If we move now, we can get out of sight. My mom, she'll guide us from there." The Apache hesitated. Every step brought pain that shot through his leg and side, yet he knew the girl was right. Staying put would make them easy prey. He gritted his teeth and pushed himself upward, each movement a battle between his body's weakness and his stubborn will to survive. The girl reached out, steadying him with a hand on his shoulder, her weight light but her grip firm. Together, they began to move, silent as ghosts through the tall, whispering grass. The night seemed to watch them. Every sound amplified, the flutter of wings, the snapping of a twig underfoot, the soft murmurs of the river winding below the cliffs. The Apache kept one eye on the terrain, the other on the girl. She moved with surprising confidence, navigating the uneven ground as if she had known it all her life. His mind began to race, wondering who or what had been searching for him. Raiders, hunters, or something darker. Something tied to the old grudges he had fought so long to survive. As they moved, the girl spoke softly, almost to herself. "It's not just them," she said, glancing back toward the shadows that stretched across the plain. "There are others. Things that linger. My mom says the land remembers. It remembers who hurt it, who fights it, who leaves footprints of pain. You're not the first to stumble here, and you won't be the last." The Apache's dark eyes narrowed. "The land remembers?" he asked. He had heard talk of spirits and omens in the past, whispered in quiet moments around campfires. Most were superstition, distractions for the fearful. But there was a weight in the girl's words, a certainty that made him pause. "Yes," she said simply. "The rivers, the trees, the rocks, they hold memory. That's why my mom listens. That's why she knows who can be saved and who cannot. The earth speaks if you know how to hear it." Pain throbbed through the Apache's body, but he found himself listening. Perhaps it was desperation, or perhaps it was the recognition of a truth older than any battle or wound. Either way, the words held him, weaving a fragile thread of belief he had long thought buried beneath years of loss and hardship. They reached the mouth of the gorge, and the girl paused. "Wait," she whispered, crouching low. "I think someone's coming. Not the same ones from before. Someone else." The Apache's pulse quickened. The wind shifted, carrying scents of smoke and leather, of horses and bodies, moving quietly through the night. He gripped the girl's arm, bracing himself against the uneven rock wall. Every muscle tensed, every sense sharpened. He had survived ambushes, stampedes, and blizzards, but this was different. This was unknown, unpredictable. And the unknown could be far deadlier than anything he had faced. Minutes passed, or maybe seconds. In the darkness, time seemed to bend. The sound of horses' hooves grew faint, then louder, circling the gorge as if searching for something hidden. The girl's hand rested lightly on his arm. "Stay still," she whispered. "They won't see us if we don't move." Yet he obeyed, the ache in his body flaring with each shallow breath. His mind drifted, thinking of the battles he had fought to defend his people, the ambush that had brought him to this place, and the inexplicable promise of healing a child had offered him. He could not ignore the strange pull of hope, nor could he dismiss the shadow of danger that pressed ever closer. Finally, the horse's hooves faded, carried away by the bend of the gorge. The girl exhaled, a sound barely more than a breath. "We have a little time," she said, "but we need to keep moving. My mom is waiting, and she'll know what to do once we get there." Apache nodded, his pride warring with necessity. He had never been good at relying on anyone, and yet every instinct told him that he could not survive the night alone. With careful, measured steps, he followed the girl deeper into the gorge, the walls closing around them as the shadows deepened. As they walked, she began to speak again, her voice low but steady. "My mom, she didn't always live out here. She used to live in towns, helping people quietly, learning what the world could not teach her. But the world, it didn't understand her. People feared her knowledge, feared the power she had. That's why she came here, to the wild, to live where she could truly help those who needed her." The Apache listened, a flicker of understanding crossing his features. He had seen fear destroy more than battle ever could. People turned on each other, neighbors on neighbors, families torn apart by suspicion and hatred. He began to understand why a woman might retreat from the world, seeking the open land where her power could be wielded without interference, without judgment. "She's feared?" he asked quietly. "Because she heals?" The girl nodded. "Yes, and because she knows things no one else sees. She can tell what's coming, sometimes before it even arrives. That's why she's the only one who can help you, and why you must trust her, even if it's hard." The Apache's mind wandered back to the moment he had first heard the girl's words, the promise of walking again. He had been skeptical, almost mocking, yet the memory of her certainty remained lodged in his mind. Perhaps there was truth in her story. Perhaps the world still held miracles. hidden in the hands of those brave enough to wield them. The gorge began to widen, revealing a river that shimmered under the moonlight, its surface catching stars like fallen sparks. The girl stopped at the edge, kneeling beside a patch of soft grass. "We're close," she whispered. "My mom will be just ahead near the old stone cabin." "You mustn't fall now," the Apache's legs protested with every movement, but he forced himself to keep walking. Each step was agony, each breath a struggle. Yet the thought of reaching safety, finding someone who could restore him, drove him onward. His mind raced with questions, doubts, and fears. Yet beneath them all lingered the fragile promise of hope, fragile as it might be. From a distance, the faint outline of a cabin came into view, half hidden by tall pines and climbing ivy. Smoke curled from its chimney, thin and wavering, but unmistakable in the cold night air. The girl's face lit up with quiet relief. "There it is," she said softly. "Just a little farther. We can make it." The Apache studied the cabin, every shadow, every corner, every window. He sensed the presence of someone waiting, someone who would either save or test him. His body ached, his pride strained against the vulnerability he had no choice but to embrace. Yet there was something undeniable about the place, something that drew him forward despite his exhaustion. Suddenly, a low growl echoed from the edge of the woods. The girl froze, her eyes scanning the darkness. The Apache's hand moved instinctively toward his knife, but the sound was faint, almost hesitant, as if the danger was watching, waiting. Every instinct screamed caution, every sense sharpened to survival. "We're not alone yet," the girl whispered. "Something's out there, waiting, but my mom. She'll protect us. I promise." The Apache exhaled slowly, steadying his racing heart. Trust was not easy, not for him, but he had no other choice. Danger pressed in from every side, the night full of unknown threats, yet the pull of hope, fragile and stubborn, urged him forward. He moved again, following the girl as they stepped closer to the cabin. Each step, a negotiation between pain, fear, and the strange possibility of salvation above them. The stars flickered faintly, distant witnesses to the struggle unfolding below. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying secrets of the land, of the past, and of the battles yet to come. Every rustle, every shadow, every heartbeat was a reminder that the night was far from safe, and that the story of the Apache, the little girl, and her mysterious mother was only beginning. And as they reached the edge of the clearing, the cabin loomed larger, its windows glowing faintly with warm light. The girl reached for his hand, small but firm. "Almost there," she whispered. "Just a little farther, and everything can start to change." The Apache nodded, gripping her hand despite the pain, despite the fear. Whatever waited inside the cabin, whether healing, mystery, or another test of his endurance, he would face it. The night was far from over, the danger far from gone, and the story far from resolved. The shadows of the forest seemed to shift and move, the wind carrying a new tension, and for the first time in weeks, the Apache allowed himself to wonder if the impossible might just be within reach. The cabin's warm glow flickered through the pines like a promise, yet the shadows around it seemed thicker than ever, heavier with danger and expectation. The Apache's legs ached with every step, but he forced himself forward, leaning on the little girl whose grip remained firm despite her small size. The night pressed down around them, full of whispers and unseen eyes, carrying the scent of smoke, pine, and something darker that made his skin crawl. "Almost there," the girl whispered, her voice steady, though a flicker of fear passed through her eyes. "My mom is inside. She'll know what to do. But you have to be quiet. They're still out there." The Apache's dark eyes scanned the clearing. The wind shifted, carrying a rustle from the tree line, the sound of leaves brushing together in a pattern too deliberate to be natural. He could feel the weight of it, the unspoken threat that pressed in from every shadow. He had survived countless battles, faced raiders, wolves, and storms, but this felt different. The danger was patient, deliberate, and he could sense it testing them, waiting for the first mistake. "Who are they?" he whispered, his voice rough with pain and fatigue. "Are they after you or me?" The girl hesitated, then shook her head slightly. "I don't know. My mom says some dangers don't come from people alone. Some come from anger, from old grudges, from the land itself, but they're real, and they're close. We have to reach her before." She didn't finish, but the tension in her body spoke for her. Every step closer to the cabin made the air feel thicker. The Apache's breathing was shallow, each inhale sharp with pain. His mind raced with images of ambushes, of battles where one wrong move meant death. Yet beside him, the girl moved with unwavering certainty, as if she had walked this path countless times, as if she knew the dangers and yet was fearless. The glow of the cabin grew brighter, the flicker of the fire inside spilling warmth and light into the night. The girl stopped suddenly, crouching low behind a bush. Her hand went to her mouth, pressing a finger against her lips. The Apache froze, following her gaze to the shadows beyond the clearing movement, just beyond the reach of the firelight. Figures shifted silently, watching. Men, or perhaps something else, their forms blurred by darkness but unmistakable in their intent. The Apache's hand instinctively went to his knife, but he knew he could not fight them in his current state. Every muscle protested, and even the smallest engagement could be fatal. "Stay behind me," the girl whispered. "We'll move slowly, my mom. She can help, but we have to get inside first. They can't see us yet, but if they do—" Her voice trailed off, fear and determination mingling in her tone. The Apache nodded, trusting her, though every instinct told him caution alone would not be enough. He followed her as she guided him, step by careful step, closer to the cabin. The figures in the shadows seemed to shift with the wind, circling, testing, always observing. Every rustle of leaves or snap of a twig felt like a warning, a countdown to the moment when the danger would strike. Almost. The girl breathed, crouching low beside a tree as they neared the cabin. The warmth from the fire inside brushed their faces, a stark contrast to the cold, tense night. She glanced at the Apache, her dark eyes meeting his. "We can do this." Just a little further. Suddenly, a twig snapped loudly behind them. Both froze. The figures in the shadows stirred, moving closer, their intentions clear and menacing. The Apache felt the sting of fear sharpen, a raw edge he hadn't felt in years. He gritted his teeth, every sense on high alert, waiting for the first move. The girl's hand touched his arm lightly, grounding him. "Don't move unless I tell you," she whispered. Her eyes scanned the darkness, calculating, reading, sensing. "We have to wait for the right moment." The figures stepped closer. The Apache could make out the shapes of men now, their faces obscured by scarves and hats, their hands near their weapons. They had been tracking them, waiting for them to reveal themselves. The air was electric with tension. The Apache felt a cold sweat running down his back despite the chill. The girl moved slightly, signaling him to follow. Each step was deliberate, silent, measured, as they edged toward the cabin. The firelight spilled across the wooden walls, illuminating cracks and shadows that could hide friend or foe alike. The figures in the dark shifted again, closer still, their intentions almost palpable. Inside the cabin, a door creaked. A figure appeared briefly in the glow, a woman, tall, strong, yet carrying an air of calm that seemed to hold the chaos of the night at bay. The Apache's heart thudded, a mix of relief and apprehension. Could this be the mother the girl had spoken of, the one who could heal him, guide him, and perhaps even protect them from the danger pressing in? The girl whispered hurriedly, "That's her. My mom. We need to reach her now, before they see us." The Apache nodded, forcing himself upright, muscles straining with pain. He followed her, each step a battle between exhaustion, injury, and the raw will to survive. The figures in the shadows were close now, circling the clearing, watching, waiting. The tension in the air was suffocating, a thick blanket pressing down, and every sound seemed amplified, the rustle of grass, the whisper of wind, the thud of his own heartbeat. They reached the edge of the clearing. The woman inside the cabin now fully visible in the firelight. She seemed to sense them, moving with a calm authority, her eyes sharp and knowing. The Apache's body sagged with relief and pain, but he kept moving, guided by the girl's small, firm hand. The figures in the shadows made a sudden move, stepping forward as if to cut them off. The Apache's instincts screamed to fight, but he knew his strength was not enough. The girl moved quickly, darting ahead of him, her voice rising in a sharp whisper. Now, a flurry of motion erupted. The woman in the cabin stepped outside, her presence commanding. She raised a hand, and for a brief, startling moment, the figures halted, as if an unseen force pressed against them. The Apache stumbled, leaning heavily on the girl. But he felt the first real sense of safety in weeks. Inside, the woman commanded, her voice calm yet fierce. The girl guided him toward the cabin door, every step urgent, every glance toward the shadows filled with tension. The figures hesitated, caught in that moment, and the Apache sensed that the night itself held its breath. Once inside, the woman moved quickly, closing the door and bolting it with practiced precision. The firelight cast long shadows across the room, revealing walls lined with herbs, jars, and strange symbols that seemed to hum with energy. The Apache sank to the floor, pain and relief mixing into a strange, heavy ache. The girl knelt beside him, her small hands steadying him. "You're safe now." "For a moment," she said softly, "Mom will help you, but you have to be still." The woman approached, her eyes sharp, her presence commanding. "He's been hurt badly," she said, more to the girl than the Apache. "We don't have much time. They'll be back in soon. The night is not finished with us yet." The Apache's dark eyes met hers, searching for answers, for some sign that this woman could truly save him. Yet even as relief washed through him, a new tension gripped his chest. The danger had not passed. The figures outside were patient, and the land itself seemed to conspire with shadows. Every moment was a fragile balance between hope and peril. The Apache knew the hardest part was yet to come. The girl spoke again, her voice low, urgent. "Mom, he's the one. He's the one you warned me about, the one who needs your help. Please." The woman nodded, moving toward the Apache with steady, purposeful steps. Her hands hovered above him, and the air seemed to change, heavy with expectation. The shadows outside shifted again, the night alive with unseen eyes. Every heartbeat, every breath, every whisper carried the weight of what was about to happen. The Apache felt the tension coil tighter around him. Healing, survival, danger all, pressed together in the small cabin, under the watchful eyes of the night. The little girl's hands held his, the mother's presence radiated power, and the unknown pressed relentlessly at the door. Outside, the wind whispered through the pines, carrying secrets and threats, circling, waiting. The Apache closed his eyes for a moment, bracing for whatever was coming. The night was far from over, the danger far from gone. And the story was poised on the edge of its most intense moment yet. Every shadow, every sound, every heartbeat was a countdown. And the Apache knew that nothing would be the same once the next step was taken. The woman's hands hovered above the Apache, her movements deliberate, steady, and calm. The air inside the cabin seemed to pulse with quiet power, a rhythm that matched the flicker of the firelight and the anxious beat of the little girl's heart. The Apache's body tensed, pain and fear mingling as he wondered if the promise of healing could truly be kept. He had been left for dead, broken and weary. Yet something about this woman, about the way she moved and spoke, gave him the faintest glimmer of hope. "Breathe," the woman said softly, her voice carrying the weight of authority and compassion together. "Let the pain be what it is for now. We cannot change the past, but we can help what is still alive." The little girl's hand rested lightly on his arm, grounding him, a tether to the small, steady hope she had brought into his life. The woman's eyes, sharp and knowing, studied his wounds, reading the stories written into every scar and bruise. Her hands moved slowly, almost reverently, as if tracing invisible lines that only she could see. The Apache winced as a sharp ache flared in his side, but she murmured something under her breath. And the pain softened, just enough for him to breathe more easily. The girl watched in awe, her small frame shivering with anticipation. She had seen her mother perform minor healings before, but never one as serious as this. She knew that the stakes were higher than ever. Outside, the shadows still lingered, a reminder that danger was patient and the world was rarely merciful. But here in this cabin, there was a quiet strength that pushed against the night, that whispered that survival was possible. "Your body has endured much," the woman said, her hands moving with careful precision over the Apache's leg. "It will take time, but the strength is still here. You must let it grow. Let it awaken." He felt warmth spread through his limbs, a sensation he had long thought impossible. His muscles twitched, responding to the subtle guidance of her hands. And for the first time in weeks, could feel the stirrings of life returning to parts of him that had been numb. Tears pricked the girl's eyes. "You see," she whispered, almost to herself, "I told you. My mom can help." Her voice trembled with relief and joy, but the tension in the air remained. A reminder that their trials were not yet entirely behind them. The woman moved to gather a bundle of herbs, crushing leaves and roots into a fine, earthy paste. She muttered words in a language old as the land itself, a rhythm that seemed to echo with the heartbeat of the prairie outside. The Apache felt the paste pressed gently against his wounds, and though it stung at first, the heat that followed carried strength, courage, and a sense of renewal that went beyond the physical. Minutes passed, or perhaps hours. In the quiet of the cabin, time seemed to blur. The Apache's breathing grew steadier, his body responding in ways he had long thought impossible. The little girl never let go of his arm, a silent promise that she would be with him through every moment. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the faintest rustle of leaves, a reminder that the world beyond the cabin still held shadows. Yet within these walls, a fragile sanctuary had been forged, built of trust, care, and a quiet defiance against the cruelty of the night. The woman's eyes met his, sharp and unwavering. "You must remember," she said, "healing is not just of the body. It is of spirit, of courage, of the will to rise again. You will walk, but you must also decide to step forward, even when the world has tried to break you." The Apache nodded slowly. Words felt heavy on his tongue, but a flicker of understanding passed through him. He had survived by skill and instinct, by endurance and stubbornness. But now he realized that true strength could be found in trust, in allowing oneself to be guided, in accepting help without shame. The girl leaned closer, her small face bright with quiet excitement. "You're going to walk again," she said. "And after tonight, things can change. You don't have to carry the pain alone anymore." The woman moved back, letting him rest for a moment. "Time will be needed," she said, "but the first steps are always the hardest. And you, brave one, have already taken them by trusting what you could not yet see." Outside, the night pressed on, shadows stretching long and thin across the prairie. The figures that had haunted the edges of their journey had vanished, perhaps deterred by the woman's presence, perhaps simply waiting for another opportunity. The Apache did not dwell on them. His focus remained on the warmth of life returning to his body, the strength slowly knitting into his limbs, and the quiet courage of the child would let him here. The little girl took his hand and guided him to the small clearing beside the cabin. The earth was soft, and the moon cast a gentle glow that made the world seem less threatening, though the wind still carried whispers of the dangers beyond. The Apache planted his feet tentatively, testing his weight. Pain shot through his leg, but the warmth of the healing and the steady support of the girl's hand kept him upright. "Careful," she said, voice light but firm. "You can do this. Just a little at a time." He took a cautious step forward, muscles trembling, heart pounding. Then another. Each movement was measured, careful, yet filled with a growing confidence he had not felt in weeks. The woman watched silently, hands folded, as though she knew the importance of letting him discover his own strength. The Apache's eyes met the girl's, and a faint smile touched his lips. The little hand that had guided him, that had offered hope when the world had abandoned him, was still holding his. I think I can," he said, voice rough but steadying with each word. "You can," the girl said simply, her eyes shining in the moonlight. "I told you. You just needed to trust." Step by step, he moved across the clearing, the night air crisp against his skin, the stars above flickering like distant fires. Each stride was a victory, each breath a reminder that life could be reclaimed, even after the harshest trials. The woman moved closer, guiding him gently, and for the first time, felt the true weight of survival balanced with hope. Hours passed, yet time felt suspended, held in the quiet triumph of small victories. The Apache's breathing grew steady, his movements more confident. The night, though still filled with unknowns, felt less threatening, as though the world itself had taken a breath in relief alongside him finally. He stopped, standing fully upright, legs strong beneath him, heart racing not with fear but with possibility. The little girl cheered softly, clapping her hands, and the woman allowed herself a small smile, proud yet composed. "You've done it," she said. "The first steps are always the hardest. The rest will follow in time." The Apache looked around, the moonlight catching the contours of the prairie, the whisper of the wind through the pines, and the firelight flickering in the cabin. The danger had not vanished entirely, and the shadows would always linger at the edges of the world. But for the first time, he felt the fragile thrill of freedom, of life reclaimed. The little girl rested her head against his arm, her voice soft. "See, I told you. My mom could help." The Apache allowed himself a quiet laugh, rough and genuine, the sound carrying across the clearing. He had been broken, abandoned, and left to the cruelty of the night. Yet here he stood, stronger than before, guided by the care and courage of two remarkable women. The woman stepped back, watching the two of them. "Remember," she said, "healing is more than just the body. Courage, trust, and the will to move forward. These are the things that keep a person alive, long after the wounds have healed." The Apache nodded, taking in her words, the little girl's presence, the vast, quiet prairie stretching beyond the cabin. He had been given a chance, a new beginning. And though the world was still wide, wild, and unpredictable, he understood now that survival was not merely about strength or skill. It was about hope, about trusting others, and about taking the first step. Even when the night seemed endless, the three of them stood together, a small circle of warmth against the chill of the night. The fire flickered, the wind whispered, and the stars above watched quietly. The Apache's legs were steady, his body mending, and his spirit stronger than it had been in weeks. The little girl held his hand, her faith rewarded, and the woman, wise and powerful, allowed herself the quiet satisfaction of seeing life restored. And in that moment, the prairie seemed to exhale, the shadows softened, and the night, though still vast and unpredictable, felt a little less frightening. The story of survival, trust, and courage had found its beginning in the quiet promise of the stars. The Apache understood that, even in the wildest, harshest lands, hope could walk again. The fire crackled. The wind carried whispers of new beginnings, and the three of them stood together, ready to face whatever the world might bring next, united by trust, courage, and the quiet certainty that life, though fragile, could always be reclaimed. The night settled softly around the cabin, and for the first time, all was still.